I am super excited today. I read a book that was amazing, and I know a ton of people always talk about being empaths and what that means and being oversensitive to emotions. And I have the expert, literally an expert. She spent 16 years being an energy practitioner. She wrote a book on Confident Empath, which is the one I read. She also wrote a book called An Energy Healer's Book of Dying, and we'll get into that a little bit too. But we're going to talk about energy protection. We're going to talk about auras. We're going to get heavy into the book. You guys are going to love this. And we're going to talk about what it is, especially with harnessing your inner power and embracing your personal life journey with your higher self. Thank you for being on the show, Suzanne. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm just excited you read the whole book. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, I enjoy reading, but it was like, so I'm pretty introverted. And so, and I'm a leader, so I can speak and I can do all those things. But it's kind of like one of those things where when you don't understand who you are and you are feeling everything and sensing everything, and then you're, being a leader, it 10X's that. And you've been that way too, as far as, in your businesses and being successful. And we'll get into that in your life. But, you don't understand. You're just giving. Everybody's taking. I'm a 10X victim in my leadership. So reading your book helped me tremendously with not just understanding myself, but allowing, especially being what love-based is and fear-based.
Yeah.
So I want to start, if you don't mind, sharing your story. We're going to kind of, go skip in the book, but go to when you're 15 years old and what happened and how that impacted your life and what it set you up for, having to learn these lessons spiritually.
For being the doing machine, right? Yeah, thanks for asking. We all have kind of maybe pivotal times in our life when things really set a belief system in us. And I'm one of 6 children and grew up with a mortician for a father and, grew up in the funeral home, hence the death and dying part of the career, by the way. Grew up with, typical great big Brady Bunch family. It was all awesome. But then my dad lost his business and he had some really tough things happen. And we one day thought that we had all this money. And the next day I saw my life going out the door. And I was super young. I was only 15, turning 16. And I was the second oldest. And I remember vividly, I write a really personal account of this in this book. I remember looking out the door, watching everything go out the door, especially our big fat speedboat and the car, and thinking, this will never happen to me. This will never happen to me. I will never, ever not be in charge of something. And it just was a kid looking at her safe and security and sense of self and worth go out the door. And I institutionalized a really deep belief system on I'm going to be the one. And I never knew how harmful that was until I was into my really, really late 30s, early 40s. And when we be the one, we are out there taking everybody's stuff and doing everything for everybody else and putting ourselves last because we think that makes us safe. And it actually exhausts us. And so this turns into the behavior patterns that we'll bring out more as we talk here in terms of empathing. So,
And you start off, and I think that's wonderful because there's a lot of people that have had some traumatic event in their life, with something like that. And maybe they're intuitive and they're empath, they're an empath and they don't know how to process it.
Yeah.
And you kind of start off the book and you talk about true empathy and you talk about it being love-based, not fear-based. Can you get into, why most people are fear-based?
Oh, well, geez, because we're programmed to be, right? And then we're validated to be, and that's our normal. And we think that's our normal. I thought it was my normal for many, many years. And so when I talk about energy, there's really 2 kinds of fuel. As a practitioner, I watch people come into my office every single day, and most everyone is running on fear fuel. And these are indicators when we say things like, I have to, I can't, I need to, I should, I have to go to work. No one has to go to work. You choose, and so we're running on these paradigms of this really slippery slope of thinking we have no choice. And when we have no choice, we're running on a fear fuel. And it really presents a whole different context to our creational reality, right? Everything's go, 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 do, have to validate, have to go outside. And love-based is a completely different fuel. This is when we start to realize, oh, I don't have to do anything. I actually get to. I get to. And then when we go really strong and big, Jason, it's I choose. I choose. I'm the one that's choosing. So feel that. Feel that. You can even say it out loud to yourself or your listeners can. I have to go to work. And it feels like, right? And then say, I get to go to work. And there's a little bit of spark to hope to that and a little bit of energy shift. And then when you say, I'm choosing to go to work, it's full power on.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, yeah. And one of the most profound quotes I saw in your book was compassion is often a reflection of our own suffering.
Yeah, and and I think what is so hard about compassion is we confuse compassion with sympathy and pity more than anything. We aren't really a compassionate species as much as we are working on pity, sympathy. I feel so bad for you. These are the things that the empath does. Whereas when we're in true empathy, we're working with compassion, no judgment. You're honoring the choices, etc. So these are really two different categories. And I think it is so awesome that there's people like you that are talking about this out there, because people are just very casually saying, I'm an empath. And they don't even know how detrimental that is to their field, right?
Yeah, we're going to get into that because I want it's and we'll get into it a little bit more heavily, but I think a lot of it is this victimization, and it's this, and you talk about unconscious empaths and the chaos of the energetic world that's around them. What is that chaos?
Well, look at your news, walk out your door, talk to your friends, look at your family. I mean, there's chaos everywhere. And what that unconscious is I love the people that even say, oh, I don't even watch the news anymore. I just can't handle it. It's too negative. It's too nasty. It's too chaotic. Well, I don't care if you're watching it or not. You still are soaking it in like a sponge because it's absolutely everywhere. And so if you are choosing to watch or not watch, there's another step to this whole business of chaos, which is finally trying to see things through the observer eye and the neutral eye so that you're still not caught up in it. So the chaos of our world is not going to change. In fact, it's going to get worse in a lot of different ways because chaos is a perspective, right? And most of us still have the perspective of chaos. And still until we start to do some really big spiritual journey work where we're starting to see, oh, chaos is actually the breakdown of all the crap programming that we've been shoved, into all these eons as humans. So you can look at it a million different ways, but until you study and really have the courage to stand back and observe, you're going to think it's all out of control.
Yeah, I love that. And what I really love about your book, and I want everyone they can go right now and get it on Amazon or wherever, Confident Empath, is it's very clear and it's got like step-by-step guide. Yep. It's like a step-by-step guide to energetic self-empowerment.
Yeah.
So, and that a lot of times you can get into books like this that are woo-woo, and then it's all philosophy and it's all like macro. And I know you were, and are a successful businesswoman. So you kind of brought that into this, like, let's be cut and dry. Let's be clear. Here's where we're going. Here's a vision.
Yep.
And, I love that part about how specific step-by-step. But when you look at self-empowerment or energetic self-empowerment for an empath, what do you view that word as, like self-empowerment?
Literally, I view that as the fuel. So again, we're coming back to there's either fear fuel or love fuel. And most of us are fueling outside of ourselves on fear. And this goes back to all the things we need to do and the places we need to be and how we need to show up and all of that stuff. But when we're really empowered, we literally change that word selfish to self-love and self-care. And when I'm self-loving, self-caring, and filling my own auric field, my gas tank first on a love vibration, I have endless energy and power. And I have the ability to see multitudes of options. And I have perspectives that I can change on a dime if I choose. There's so much power when we take it inward and we choose to know that I'm looking at this entire creational reality only through my eyes coming from my matrix. That's my power. We think all the power is out here, right?
Right.
So I have a big, huge part in that book about talking about the controller program. I mean, think of what we think has power over us, from, government to religion to medicine to education to finance to you name it, right? nobody or no thing has any power over you unless you let it. And that's when we become empowered, is when we start to understand I'm my own matrix controller. I'm in one of my own,
Mhm.
inside of my own programming. And then it becomes a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, you can see the programming, and I think this is really important. This external programming you're talking about, you can see it, and I see it with my friends, and I have friends that are on the right and friends that are on the left,
Mm-hmm.
and they will literally, if they're on the right, all those issues that are on the right, they put
Yep.
like just cut and dry, like they don't ever deviate.
Yep.
It's specifically this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue, and it's the right perspective or it's the left, and it's like you've allowed somebody to take over, to hijack, and you talk about that in the book.
Yep.
But you've allowed somebody to take over, whether it's a government, whether it's the pharmaceutical industrial complex, whatever it may be.
Yep.
You've allowed that to happen, and I like that you address that, because that, to me, victimhood is one of the biggest problems that we have and we're fortunate enough to live in a first world country where our
Kinda.
latte temperature could be off.
Yeah. Kinda for first world country. because because and everybody take what resonates whenever you listen to anything I say, because I'm not here to change anybody's mind or be your truth either, because this is the point. The
Right.
point is it's mind control. We
Hmm.
have been mind controlled as a species and a planet from the very beginning and eons of time ago, because it was purposeful. Now we are waking up, hence what we call the awakening or the ascension. I mean, this is the process of returning I always teach it like a Jenga game. The hologram of our creational reality was very stable, and then a whole bunch of the pieces came out and got twisted up and inverted, and it got really wobbly. Now we are putting the pieces back together so that we can bring it back up to how it started, and that's actually what's going on here. So the Jenga game is in big play right now, and we're finding the reversal programs, the mind control programs, the inversions, all of the things that we thought were truths are really absolutely crap. So we're finding out how duped we've been, and this is
Yes.
the chaos. So again, I see chaos as movement forward, to tell you the truth.
That's awesome. Yeah. The as above, so below. But in the book, you start off like in the beginning of how you're going to learn how to become present, how you can connect to your divine energy, how you can see your inner light for personal healing. And not only do you say personal healing, you see planetary healing, and
Mm-hmm.
then assisting humanity as a whole. And then you get into identifying the different kinds of energy, that affects our breath, our actions, and you take on, and you mentioned something about fuel. And I know we're skipping ahead chapters. We're going to be moving all around.
That's okay.
But when you talk about fuel and how the empath can learn to retrain,
Mm-hmm.
because this is, and I want people to understand there's some spiritual work that needs to get done here. This isn't like something that you can do in an afternoon and you're good to go.
Yeah, because I've been doing it my whole life and I still do it. You're right. It's ongoing, right?
Yeah, and what I want you to talk about, if you can get into kind of the fuel and the different
Yep.
types of fuel, and then how that exhausts us physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally.
The way that I teach it in all of my classes and with my clients is it's a really easy metaphor. If we think whatever your God package is, that's up to you. Whatever you think God is, I see it as a design intelligence that doesn't have a body. So we are gifted to be a body of an experience on behalf of that source energy. So we're a vehicle. We're a vehicle of source. So if we are a vehicle, much like a car, it needs gas, right? And so our chakra system is a wonderful, beautiful chakra system, is like the hole in the gas tank on the side of the car. You go up to the SA or BP or wherever you live, and you turn on the gas and you stick that little thing in and you squeeze it, right? And out comes all that fuel. Well, we get our fuel through source via consciousness. It's our life force. It's our chi. It's our prana. It's what makes our parts work so we can go flying down the road just like a car. So chi, prana, life force is always going to be there because it's an omnipresence of source. But where the empath falls short is the gas tank. So I don't care how great your car is and how wonderful your parts are. And when you get that gas in there with no tank, if it's rusted, if it's broken, it's going to spill all over the ground and you're going to have a puddle in the fuel station and you're not going to be able to go very fast down the highway of life, right? So this is what the empath does. They have this open fuel tank that's leaking all over the place. And now I'm exhausted and I need fuel. And I'm this big fat beacon to other people that steal fuel because my windows are open.
Right.
So it's like anything can fly in my windows and get me in my car if they're all down. So just kind of think of it like that. It's like, gosh, you're going through the car wash, you got all your windows down and your sunroof open, and you can't figure out why you're all wet. This is how everybody gets attacked, right? We're getting attacked and stealing and having energy transference amongst each other all day long until we learn the processes of being a skilled empath, which starts with A, belief systems, and we'll get into that in a second because that's even bigger. But B, the gas tank. Until we start to know that I'm in charge of that gas tank, I have an auric field that I'm responsible for, and I get to discern everything surrounding me and start to ask, hey, wait, is that good fuel or bad fuel? Is that my fuel or your fuel? Is that crappy fuel? Do I want that fear? And on it goes. So we become in charge of not only our vehicle, but our gas and our gas tank.
Yeah, that's so good. And you mentioned something about, and I want to get into this part about how people are labeled. So we're big on labels nowadays. And like I said, you can go onto Instagram or TikTok and you'll see everything about an empath and all these videos. And I'm too sensitive. And I'm going to quote you out of the book. So it's labeled as too sensitive, too delicate, emotionally complex. And then you say in the book, perhaps you are just plain exhausted, worn out, and sick and tired of being resentful of everyone taking advice, time, and energy from you, all the while never feeling like you get anything in return in the way of help, attention, acknowledgement, and appreciation. And that sentence is so powerful. But what do you look at when people are labeling an empath?
Well, I think that that's a typical human thing, and I don't think that's going away very soon. However, I hope that it does, in terms of we're realizing how detrimental labels are and how limiting labels are. And I think the sad part about the empath label is a lot of people think it's a cool label because we do not clarify the difference of what an empath is versus having empathy. And this is where the belief system comes in. We think we're supposed to feel for others. We think we're supposed to care and help and fix others. Our belief systems oftentimes are twisted and contorted to think we have to fix somebody versus just be there and support and love. So the belief system is really the foundational broken point here. And then we get confused in our head because now, oh my God, I'm helping everyone. I'm fixing everyone. Aren't I wonderful? Because everyone tells me I'm wonderful. So we get very confused because the programming only goes deeper when I'm getting outside validation that I'm wonderful, but I'm exhausted. And I don't want to tell anybody I'm exhausted because then I might not be wonderful. So this is the kind of the loop pattern. And I was classic at this, Jason. The reason why I wrote this book, not only am I a practitioner, but I was classic since I was a kid. And I am telling you, I was that little pink bunny that, isn't it Energizer Bunny?
Energizer, yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. And I would just go and go and go and go and do and do and do because I thought that's what made me wonderful. And I was so flippin' scared to stop doing anything because I thought everyone wouldn't love me or I'd fall over and I'd never stand up again. And the worst part is I would not let anybody help me because I could do it faster and better anyway. That's where my ego is so bent. And the reality is I could do it faster and better anyway because I never let anyone else in to be able to fail or try or, God forbid, support, so we create this monster ourselves.
Yeah. And I want you to tell, in the book, you talk about this, about you being exhausted, worn out, sick and tired, but you talk about it with holidays with your sister.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big one. That was my fall. That's when the bunny fell over.
But can you, because I think there's a lot of moms that are out here that are right at this. I mean, there's a reason why these empath videos get millions of views.
Yeah.
But there's a mom that was just like you, exhausted, worn out, sick and tired. We got Thanksgiving coming up and we've got Christmas. Yeah. So it would be awesome if you could kind of share that story.
I was the one, because this is what happened when I was 15. I said to myself in that kitchen at 15, I will be the one. And I took that on and became what everybody in the public perceived as a very professional, really successful, really this, that, and the other thing. I'm the one that was the field trip mom, the hockey mom. I traveled all over the country being corporate. I was juggling so many freaking balls that I didn't even know my name, but I was still the one. So I would do these holidays. But it was, I can't even imagine how I was treating my family and my children. I was the drill sergeant screaming for hours beforehand because no one was helping. And they were trying, but I was such a drill sergeant that I was exhausting everybody and no one was having any fun. But I thought I was doing the right thing because I had to have the right napkins that matched the plate, that had the right colored candles because that's what you do. And it was just ridiculousness, but I believed in the program. So when I finally snapped one time and I called them, I have 5 sisters and I called one of them and then it started the sister chain on the telephone. And I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing Thanksgiving. I'm sick and tired of being the one. I'm not doing it. And they're all like, well, if you're not the one, then like, who's the one? So if you're that family member that's allowing them to be the one, this is participatory. This is, codependent, right? And I said, I don't care. And I said, and I'm not even going to make something. I'm going to buy a gross pie at the gas station because I just don't care. And I meant every word of it because I was pissed. So I begrudgingly went over to my sister's house, who was 10 times smaller than mine, and we have a gigantic family. And I was literally, and I say it honestly in the book, it was very humbling for me to admit I wanted everybody to have a horrible time because I still wanted everyone to think, I know, right? What an ass.
I love our narcissistic ego. It's so fun.
So I come in with my crappy pie and I was so dumbfounded because the joy that my sister was experiencing by being the one for the first time was something that I had robbed from everyone in my family because I was so into being the one. And it was so overwhelmingly obvious on how unbelievably selfish I had been, but there was no clue to it until I experienced all sides of it. And I literally, right in the book, I had to go out on the deck and I just was bawling. I was so ashamed of myself. And
everybody's having fun. I mean, you put in the book, like the house was 10 times smaller, but people were just laughing, having fun.
Yep. Yeah.
And it was like, and you said something about never feeling like you get anything in return from someone else.
Yep.
And I resonated with that. And that's always been my problem is like, I work, I need to work even harder than everybody else. And I'm the victim to that. And every boss I've ever had takes advantage of me. Every relationship I've ever been, she's taking my money. I mean, I had this programming, not anymore, but I had this programming in my head from these belief systems is I'm not good enough. So if I'm not good enough, then I have to overperform, exhaust myself. And then from there, have this reoccurring loop, this ego loop that was like, well, that's just my life. Everybody just takes advantage of me. And
then we play victim controller.
Yes.
And the underwriting program that you're talking about there, I explain quite extensively. It's called poverty consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And poverty consciousness is really not just about money. It's about the anchor inside our DNA that is about not having safe, worth, and enough. And it's mostly the enough. There's not enough money. There's not enough stuff. There's not enough time. There's not enough help. And when we're running these programs, the underlying anchor is I'm not enough. And we never get to the anchor because we're so stuck in the resentment of there's not enough time. Nobody's helping me. You're not around enough. So we're projecting instead of taking the responsibility of going, oh my goodness, I'm the one that doesn't feel enough, safe, or worth. So I'm proving it outside of myself instead of owning it within myself. And this is the loop. And it's really detrimental.
Yeah. And I think as a man, for myself, it was just be quiet and suffer. But in my head, I'm just running this narcissistic loop about how much I'm suffering.
Yeah.
And then why can't I have a good relationship? Why can't I have a great job?
But I victimized my husband for years and probably still do in some regards, even though I'm really much better at all this. But, I victimized constantly because he was didn't want to do conflict, didn't want to show up, didn't want to do all that stuff. So I was constantly looking like I did everything. And everyone's like, oh my God, you do everything. And then I'm like, I do everything. And yet I'm pissed I do everything is going in your head. So these are they're games that we play with ourselves. And what happens to the empath is we just get exhausted and eventually we will have dis-ease in our body, which oftentimes we take that little dash out and we have disease. We will break down the body, whether it's physically, emotional, mental, or spiritual. It is going to happen. And so, I crashed and burned and decided to maybe wake up and take some self-responsibility.
Yeah. And that's been, my journey too. You talk about you because you've mentioned belief several times, and I want people to understand this. But you say in the book one of the biggest belief messages receive is to trust our think center
Mhm,
versus our feel center.
mhm.
So, as an empath, you think you want to have the think center because the feel center hurts you all the time. So,
Yeah,
can
a
you
lot of
explain the
empaths.
think center
Yep.
and the feel center?
Yep. A lot of empaths see empath as a curse. And we
Mhm.
can get into why it's a blessing towards the end, but I see how they want to not feel anymore because they feel so much. But I really want to make this clear. Most people are think feeling. So what they're doing is they're feeling through their mental field. So they're doing this like the hamster wheel on the cage in the head. So they're stressed, they're anxiety, they're heightened, they're this, they're that. That is not a feel. A feel is me going down underneath and saying, I am feeling I have no worth. And when I feel no worth, what does that feel like? Oh my God, that feels like I'm melting into the word work and no one sees me. That feels like I'm the small child hiding in the corner and I'm so alone. That feels like the whole world is closing in on me and it's dark and I don't know what to do. When we get to these true feels in our body, this is when we activate our senses and we start to be able to logically then go, okay, a think feel is this, a feel is this, and which is my reality, right? Which is my reality? Because it's a little bit of both. And this is when we start to dissect things down.
Yeah, and getting into that, you said no one can hold our truth for us. It is our responsibility to align to what resonates as divine for us. There's always like speak your truth and all this truth stuff. What do you mean when you say no one can hold our truth for us?
Well, we think that we want someone to understand my truth. I'm arguing with you. I'm telling you something. I'm on the right and you're on the left. You need to understand my point of view. They don't need to understand your point of view because we all have a right to have those lenses that we're looking out of. And my point in saying I can't know your truth is because my little supercomputer or my tank or my existence has been uploaded since utero in my version of things and no one can be inside of there. And sometimes I'm not even aware of what's in there. I tell a story when I teach. It's like maybe you were 5 and you were in the kitchen listening to mom and dad have a fight. And you were terrified because it felt unsafe. And mom had a
Mhm.
yellow dress on, and you don't even hardly remember that whole thing. But you've had an issue with safe your whole life. And all of a sudden, one day you trigger, and you have no idea you triggered because the guy next to you had a yellow shirt on. And that hit you at work, and all of a sudden you're not safe at work and you have a fight. This is the kind of thing that we hold within our container. Now, I don't even know I have a yellow shirt trigger. How can my fiance or my boss or whomever,
Right.
right? So we think that we can get through to somebody and have them fully understand. And when we just get to the point where it doesn't matter if you understand, I want to know my truth within my own self and give you the opportunity to hold yours without having to have them match. The reason why we want them to match is because I want to be right.
Yes.
That's the big one.
Yeah, and it's so funny how we get where we're victims, where we're all in ego, but yet we turn around and think it's everybody else's fault.
Oh, we're classic. I mean, humans are they're so fun to really seriously study. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and so whenever you are coaching with somebody or you're working with somebody, you gave a really helpful. You said the higher self has the ability to heal our DNA, and I know we'll get into steps here in a second more with that, but kind of a macro view. When I think of higher self or I think of DNA, and you get into Akash records and all that,
Mhm.
later in the book, but um, what is that statement? The higher self has the ability to heal our DNA. That sounds hopeful to me.
Let's talk about a family that has a lineage line of abuse. Okay.
Mm,
And I signed up for this family and I continued this lineage line of abuse. So I come in with a really horrible beginning and I've got, the alcoholic father or the submissive mother or the broken family or the whatever, and the abuse continues. And now I'm a child thinking I'm a victim. And if I don't start to do some higher self healing into that DNA bloodline, I will continue that victimization and go on through life after lifetime carrying that same program because I don't know any different. What I hopefully am getting across is that you are so powerful in attachment to your contract, your higher self, your soul, whatever words you want to use here, and start to go, oh, I may have felt victimized when I was young, but this was part of my journey, part of my plan. So I'm going to take that as curriculum and a lesson. And I'm with love going to accept the fact that I'm empowering myself now beyond victimhood and not seeing myself in that same role so that I can finish the journey by learning the lesson. And this
Mhm.
brings forward the healing in the DNA. And we can take that even farther, called lineage healing, meaning if I stop the madness of abuse or all kinds of horrid things in my family line, if I really clear that in my soul DNA, my soul family, when they're in between lives, gets that offered to them as a gift as well. Whether they choose to take that or not is up to them. It isn't forced, it's offered. Meaning, if my dad was the alcoholic and died of it 10 years ago, when he's reincarnating, he does not necessarily any longer need to have that victimization controller program come in alcohol any longer.
That's so awesome.
It's
And you know that,
powerful.
yeah, it's powerful, and that we have the ability to be able to do that, in this matrix of learning lessons. One of the things that you talk about, and I think this comes with victimhood, is, and I love the word that you use. This is very specific. You said we've trained to put ourselves second,
Hmm.
and I thought of that because I really was thinking about it. I was like, Jason, you've trained to put yourself second. You've done this to yourself.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Like an empath just being second to everything. A mom,
Well, again, it's like, I've got to go see my mom in the nursing home today. Not I get to or I'm choosing to. It's I got to go see my mom. I have to. It's part of my, and I come in with this really negative, Nancy attitude, and I go home resentful because I didn't have any time for me today. So again, we're making the choices with the wrong fuel here, first and foremost. But we train ourselves because of our family upbringing, because of social upbringing, dogmatic and religious upbringing. We're trained all around cultural. Everything trains us on how we are supposed to be. And we are breaking these down with this newer incarnations. These younger people are so fascinating. I mean, my kids are in their 30s now, but even these 20-year-olds that I work with, and I love the young kids, they're coming in so powerful and strong. And it's funny because their beliefs are different and they are
Mhm.
intuitively knowing things different. I mean, look at if I have an 89, 90-year-old parent looking at a grandchild who's an influencer, they're like, well, why don't you get a real job? Yeah, right? And this is
Right.
so awesome and beautiful because they're experiencing life and getting paid for it and loving every minute of it if they're doing it the way that they choose, right? Versus, I went to work 40 to 60 hours every week and busted my butt and blah, 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 and look what I got for it? So
Right.
this is the cultural change that we're seeing too, is that we are changing these belief systems.
Yeah, and when you talk about this never-ending cycle of conditional behavior,
Yes.
so it's conditioned, and you have to realize that to break free from the matrix is understand the condition. But if a lot of people aren't unaware of the energy and emotion and the exchange of what happens, can you get into that? Like what is happening? Why is an empath feeling like they're sick, or they go out and they go to a party, and what is this energy and emotion exchange happening?
So if you imagine that we all have our auric bubble around us, which is that equivalent of the gas tank again, and if my gas tank is down, okay, my windows in my car are open kind of a thing again. So now if I've got someone negative or someone who doesn't have any gas, they're going to jump in my field. It's like a vampire hitchhiker. They jump right in and they suck it out. So I'm getting more and more tired, more and more tired. So I'm the lively one of the party because everyone wants to talk to me, but actually they're sucking me dry. So I'm going to go suck somebody else dry. So it's
Hmm.
constant vampirism. Okay. And we're doing it all the time. Sometimes we're doing it in nasty, horrible ways by being manipulative, controlling, gaslighting, hurtful. That's true vampiring. And other times we're doing it because, oh, I feel so bad for you. Oh, I want to fix it for you. Oh, I want your life to be easier. We do this with our children. Oh, I'm so worried about my kids. Why we worry about our kids, I do not understand because that does not behoove anything. And I am not joking. I have 4 kids, I have a bunch of grandkids, and I don't worry. I don't worry. I just stick out energy constantly for what I want, not what I don't want. What people don't understand when they're the worrier, which is the classic empath, I worry, worry, worry because I think if I worry enough, I'm going to change it. You know what you're going to do? You're going to potentially give a grid pattern out there to what your family member does not need versus what they truly would like to have. You can't change their life, but you certainly can push the energy that way. So
Yeah, and
worry,
you talk about chords, and I thought that was really interesting,
yep,
and
worry
especially
is
if your family
choking.
member.
Yeah. Cords are choking. They absolutely strangle. They take the fuel. They are constantly, it's like tying you up with an octopus. It's like, get out of the way. Here's another really quick true story. My oldest would go back to Thanksgiving inevitably at like 11 o'clock at night in the middle of a snowstorm for a 4-hour drive, right? And everyone's like, oh my God, Suzanne, aren't you worried about him? He's going to end up in the ditch. Oh my God, what if he dies? What if he this? What if he's that? And I would look at him and I'm like, that doesn't even enter my mind. Why would I think about all of the negative, horrible things that may happen to him
Mhm.
instead of just throwing a big angel on his car and saying, see you, text me when you're home? Because my true belief is if he ends up in the ditch, he was supposed to anyway. So why would I worry him into the ditch?
Right, right. That's so true.
It's so ridiculous. And I love this one. Oh, so and so, has cancer. Pray for her to get better. Absolutely not. I will never pray for someone to get better because, again, what is my perspective of better and what is their higher self's perspective of better? How
Right,
dare I step onto that plan? I will pray for their highest and best good.
right.
That's what I'll pray for. So these are really strong differences in energy, and we don't even understand what we're doing with this stuff. And we can make these changes, huge, profound changes, quite easily, but it isn't easy. We can make them easily, but it isn't easy.
I know you were said in the book you were raised Catholic. I was raised Baptist, but I always picture like Mary and Jesus, and Mary being the mom. Obviously, she wouldn't want any of that to happen to him. So yeah, I mean, but then he's the most influential person in the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of his, I mean, there's a lot of dogma tied around him, but a lot of his teachings are amazing and very spiritual. And if I was that mom, obviously you don't want him getting crucified. Obviously you don't want him getting beaten. You don't want him running around all over town, going against society and being a rebel as he was.
Right.
So I get exactly what you're saying.
And I don't want my kid in jail, and I don't want my kid to have cancer, and I don't want my grandchild to die. But if you truly are in alignment with God's source, you understand soul contracts, and that's why I put that part in, which is understanding they have a reason they're doing this, and I need to get out of the way, or I'm in the middle of their journey. I'm
That's so
changing the
hard.
trajectory of their journey.
That's so hard to do because, and you talk about this in the book with, when we want to like take their emotion and we want to, it's almost like going against their free will.
Yes. Yes. And can I even go bigger? It's
Yes,
actually
go ahead.
going against divine will, which is even
Oh, yeah,
different.
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one really screwed me up because I was like, I'm the one that always is more than happy to give advice. After all, I study all these spiritual books and know all this,
Yep.
So if you come to me, I'm quit. Oh, let me interrupt you and give you some advice.
Well, I truly still give tons of advice and lessons and talk, but I say if you choose 1,000 times a day, because
Right.
I don't get to choose for somebody. And
Mhm.
I did a very long and intensive self-learning on if you choose. I said it out loud, literally, and I'm not joking. For 2 weeks, I drove my family insane, talking about what I was choosing and not choosing. I'd say, "Hey, hold on just a minute. I'm choosing to take a sip. I'm going to choose to put this down." And I did that for real, like out loud, like that for like 2 weeks, because it was imperative for me to understand as a practitioner and teacher choice. Really understand that every second of every second is choice. And I drove everyone crazy, but I did accomplish the goal pretty well for myself.
So I want to kind of alchemize this victimhood of empath, and you talk about, you say in the book, for the empath who is looking to harness and own their energetic gifts, very important 2 words there, learning to trust in what feels like truth or not is a first step. Can you explain why it's an energetic gift?
Oh God, I love being an empath. I mean, I love being able to feel the oneness of our world. But if I'm not doing it correctly, I'm sick, I'm exhausted, and I'm yuck. But let's stay on the positive side for a minute. If I'm an empath, I can connect with the animals and the plants well beyond somebody just sitting there in the park. I'll never forget one day I was down in the park by our house, And I was 100% oracally connecting to everything. And I was just in this moment of bliss. And this dude came down, and there was these two deer standing there. And this dude came down on his bike, and I'm like, oh, there's really pretty deer right here. And he goes, whatever. And he kept driving. And I'm like, okay. And again, it's not right. It's not up to me to tell him how great the deer is, but there's so many people on this planet just purging through life and just barreling along in this world of non-connection. And the empath has the ability to just know and sense and feel and relate and create on such a high level. And we are gifted down here to be able to return the information back to source. That's why the empath is here, to return the information back to the Akashic records so that we can evolve not only as a human being, but as a planet and a species. And this is the big trick. We've been taught religion and prayer is things that we rattle off and we learn, and it's just monotonous stuff and there's no real connection. But we know prayer works because it's energy, right? So now if we understand, everything's energy and I can co-create, prayer becomes a whole different thing.
Yeah, and towards the end of the book, you get into prayer, but let's just pause there because I think this is really cool when you talk about higher self and prayer. Can you explain prayer?
Yeah, I mean, again, I grew up Catholic and we had to memorize prayers. And as I was becoming more and more intuitive and all my psychic skills were coming back, I would sit in church. True story. Sat in church and I would go to church just to scan people because I was just watching auras and I was practicing my third eye. And I would see someone that was truly praying because the auric field was fabulous, or someone that's just blah, 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 right? And so prayer was always very a turnoff for me until I started to really do the work of being an empath. An empath can feel the sadness of the water. They can connect with the fish that are being polluted. They can understand the actual horror of an oil spill. And what do we do with that? Hopefully, when we're confident and trained, we bring that back to source energy so that the new incarnates are coming in that have the message and the information and the wisdom to come down here and change this planet. But we haven't done prayer like that. We rattle off stuff that doesn't go to source and go back to the library so that the new incarnates have the information. This is when the scientist comes in that cures cancer. This is when the little girl becomes, working with the whales becomes the one that saves them all. I mean, this is who comes into our planet as evolved souls instead of us doing a repeat pattern of karma crap that we've done over and over again for eons.
Yeah, and that was something that you talked about, and I never even thought of it as, because we're always praying to something external, and you talk about in the book about trying to get help.
Yeah. I mean, again, this morning, my kid was doing something in a legal system situation. I'm not going to pray for him to have the outcome that even he wants or what I think I want. I'm going to pray for the outcome of what is best for the situation at hand, period. Because we put our personality into everything. And my personality perspective viewpoint of your highest good has nothing to do with what your soul thinks, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that that really helped me with that part is, knowing that there's this inner knowledge, this eternal inner knowledge that I have with the higher self that has the answer. So, I don't need to have that conversation. I don't need to I'm not a victim and need God to step in, and fix something.
That's one of the biggest, that is the biggest program on this planet is the Savior program. The Savior program is the biggest planet that everyone has succumbed to, whether the Savior is the military, medicine, finance, religion. I don't care what it is. The Savior program, and Disney's done a doozer on top of it because everyone wants to be Prince Charming.
Right.
We've done the Savior program a gazillion times over, and it's really difficult. Even Disney's doing it different now. They've learned also. I think it's great that they're expanding. Learn for yourself, make yourself the savior, because we are who we have been waiting for. We are who we're waiting for. And so it's time for us. This is the empowerment. And when you said, Jason, when you can hear it inside and connect, that's the feel, because your intuition, your intuitive body, your knowingness feels a certain way. It doesn't think, it feels. And this is why we're such a special species, because we're the human that's coveted for the feel. We can get mind programmed in 2 seconds, but you can't program my feel. You can't. You can program my mind to change my feel, but you can't program my feel.
So how would an because I want to go right there before we go into the next one. So how would an empath, let's say you I mean you had a situation where your husband lost his job, or there was like a corporate,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
then you had decided to get out of your corporate side of things.
mm-hmm.
You wrote this in the book, and then next thing you know, it's like kind of both of you kind of without any work.
Oh,
How do
not
you
kind
not
of,
allow that?
completely.
Yeah, how do you allow that external emotion not to, like, that dread, or because depression and mental health is so big
Well,
now.
let's just play that out for a second. So I actually left first, and then he got let go after me. So I had jumped corporate, and 3 months later he got let go because his corporate sold out. So we were two adults with two mortgages, four kids, tons of stuff, and nothing. I mean, we were in a food stamp line, which I didn't even know how to navigate. It was mind
Mhm,
boggling, and I remember being so scared because, again, the three things that'll hit us is our safe, our worth, and enough. I don't have enough money. I'm not safe. I might lose my house. I need the things. And these are what rattle us in those belief systems. But when we're aligned, I would go in and I would say, oh my gosh, maybe I have to go back to corporate. And if I went inward, I would hear absolutely not. But my head would go, oh my God, right? But my
yeah, that
gut
feels
would say,
safe.
no, yeah, my gut would say, I'm safe, right?
Yes.
And so this, like right now, if you're looking for a job, if you're out there scrambling and scrambling and pushing the energy, you're not going to find the job. If you manifest the job to come forward to you, you still have to put your resume out and make the phone calls, blah, blah, blah. But you are bringing the energy into you because you're
Mhm.
creating it, not pushing against it. We do everything backwards.
Yeah, and I think that poverty consciousness, like you talked about earlier, because that really resonated with me as far as, I mean, I have a really great job. I'm able to be free. I work from home. It's amazing. I can do a podcast in the middle of the afternoon with
Mhm.
you. Like I have all this things to be blessed, but then I worry because I'm going on a trip, and how much is that going to cost? And I start running numbers in my head. Where does, especially when it comes to money and an empath, what is that traumatizing relationship?
It's 100% the safe and the enough. That's what it
Mm,
is. So the money is just the outcome of the imbalanced root chakra, and the root chakra is what houses beliefs. And so this is the loop there again. The loop of safe, not enough, and worth is in that root chakra, and we get trained from our parents and our surroundings from the very beginning, starting in utero, by the way. So if I'm inside of a belly hearing, oh my God, we don't have enough to have this baby,
mhm.
I'm going to be a child that already comes out with programming of poverty consciousness and that I don't have any worth.
That's so
It's
good.
ridiculous
Yes,
how
there's a
much
lot
we're
of that.
doing this. So, and then if I believe that program, I feed it. I feed my own programming. Don't fool yourself that we create our own monster, right? I'm not enough. I can't find the job. I'll never have enough money. Money doesn't grow on trees. All of those things we feed it and feed it and feed it. So it becomes a reality. This is possible to change when you change the belief. But it isn't easy, but it is possible to change the belief.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's. I think that's where somebody needs to get, because you have a whole section on the root chakra,
Yep.
and you go through all the chakras, and that's why I encourage people to get the book, so they could go through that process. You say in the book, true empathy is gifting others energy with no conditions attached.
Yeah,
It
that's a big
honors
one.
the other.
That's the big one, isn't it? So, no energy attached is this. If I'm truly going to help you and I'm truly going to give you support, and I am doing it with full empathy, you get to do whatever you want to. It's like when that client walks out my door and I gave them a healing and they feel awesome, but they turn around and they completely bring everything back in 20 minutes because they get to. That
Hmm.
doesn't reflect on me. There's no energy attached to me. When they walk out the door, it's theirs, right? I keep my energy. They go home with their energy. I cut all the cords. I cut all the room. I cut the body cords, everything, because you have the right to go home and do whatever it is that you get to do. And it's not just an energy session. It's when we pass people in the store. It's when I have a loved one, a child, a boss. It's every interaction that we have. If I'm waiting in a subconscious way to see if you made any changes because I was right, then we're right back to the conditional.
Yeah, it's so hard when you're dealing with, like you talked about your son, or from a personal standpoint, my girlfriend, her daughter's going through drug abuse, and it's so, as a mom, it's so tough to know that she's out there somewhere in a drug house. Who knows what's happening to her, and then not being responsive and, not wanting to learn, just asking for money all the time. It's so hard to understand that you're honoring that person and allowing them to learn those lessons.
It is very hard. It's very hard, but it's the most honest and integral thing we can do from a spiritual standpoint. Because for all we know, that child came down here with a specific lesson that needed to have those experiences to finish whatever karmic path or create something new for themselves. And I don't have the right to put my personal spin on that and my attachment to it with my egoic spin of I'm the mom. I should have done better, because what the mom is doing is, if I was a better parent, she wouldn't be like this.
Yes,
if
100%.
you loved me more, you would shape up. Right. That's what we do. Do you see the conditions?
Yes, 100%. And a lot of it, I think, is, for me, the worry with the kids. I have 4 kids. So that worry that's attached is me attaching conditions to them.
It is 100%. And I raised all 4 of my kids the same way, whether I was a corporate mom or this mom. I allowed them to fall and fall hard. I allowed them their consequences. And it doesn't mean I'm cooler or better. I just knew this when I thought I was a really bad parent, to tell you the truth, because I parented completely different. I did not worry. I didn't care. I had this whole thing in me before, when I was even corporate, that you have a consequence. You created, it's the law of cause and effect. And I knew the institutional laws and the universal laws. I knew them as 2 different things. This is institutional law. You can't do this. This is cause and effect. So this is what I understood. Cause and effect. You have the right to not do your dishes, but you will have an effect. You're going to get 2 dishes tomorrow. And you actually have the right to not do 2 dishes, but then you're going to get 4 dishes, because I'm in charge of the end result, right? And I don't have to manipulate. We can't make our kids do the dishes, Jason. We think we can. We think we won, but we really didn't, because they chose.
That's so good. Yeah. And
they chose with anger. They chose with self-hatred. They chose with hatred towards you. They chose with frustration. They chose with, okay, I get it. They chose with, I guess I don't care anymore. I'll do it. They chose with, I want to do the dishes so I can go play hockey. I mean, they chose, period. And yet we think we made them do it. It's astounding to me.
Yeah, we almost think, I had a realization on this. It's like, that's not my kid.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I'm just here. I just kind of helped them out. I fed them, changed some diapers. But they're their own divine human that's being reincarnated so many times. Yes. So if they've had thousands and thousands of meat suits, me just kind of hanging out with a little bit for, 20, 30, 40, 50 years until I die, it's not really that big of a deal.
Well, and we make it a really big deal, and we make hierarchy of family a big deal. And I do this a lot with my clients. Just because I'm the parent here and you're the child, there is no hierarchy. Right. We are 2 souls that came in, and we chose these positions for this time period.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That re-shifts parenting 100. That's a whole different paradigm there.
Oh, yeah. And it's so much easier when you start to work that way, because the manipulation and the need to be right and the twisting and the conditionalizing, all that stuff goes away. It just is what it is.
Yeah, when you honor the other, especially when it comes to not just parenting, but like a relationship, that's probably the most work we have to do, because we're with somebody all the time. When we
learn, really truly internalize the word honor, when we learn the actual aspect and energy of that word, our lives change profoundly. And I learned that word during the hospice process on the first book, because I honored and understood the death process since a child, because my dad was a mortician, and I got it. I just got it. And that was a really important message for me to bring into all aspects of my life, is just honor the energy. Honor the energy of the other person's choices, period. I mean, see how much easier it would be to navigate life if we just stepped back and honored.
Yeah. And you said this, and this is exactly goes right into it. You said, when I choose either consciously or unconsciously to take on your feeling, your emotion, pain, fear, or your situation in an individualistic way, I have now fueled the energy with conditional fear instead of unconditional love of oneness. When I empath, I shift from the collective observer into the conditional judge of the other of the situation, and then take from the other's energy and make it my personal affair.
Isn't it horrible what we do to one another? And we have
no idea. That was horrific. I read that and I was like, oh my God, a conditional judge.
And again, this is why I think it's funny when you see people go, I'm an empath. And I'm like, do you really know what you're doing?
Yeah, that's
You
great.
asked me before, the great side of being an empath. I mean, I wouldn't be the healer that I am. I wouldn't be able to tap into paranormal and astral, travel. I wouldn't be able to know galactics. I wouldn't be able to do any of the things that I do if I wasn't fully empathic. But I also am very diligently trained to say, no, this is not mine. This is not mine. This is not mine.
Yeah, and I think that's important. So whenever we look at and we'll start wrapping it up slowly, but whenever we look at triggers and then sympathy, like because triggers is a big one, and you get into the physical aspects of it. And I know when I get triggered because you feel almost like you're going to have a panic attack, and
Yep,
a
or you
lot of
get hot or you
empaths,
sweat or
right?
yep,
Get depressed, whatever it may be.
yep.
How do you handle it? How does an empath handle a trigger?
They don't. When they're not trained. When you are trained, you notice, and you know what I do when I do things now? It's so funny because like I always say, why did I co-create that? Why did I just co-create that? I just had that happen. That's insane. Why did I just react like that? What do I still have to dig out? So I turn anything around immediately and take the self-responsibility of I co-created that trigger. That means I've still got work to do in there. And again, this is understanding that, wow, I never knew there was a yellow dress in my background of being a 5-year-old that my mom and dad had a fight over that still triggers me for yellow. I mean, how am I going to figure that out if I don't have really, really deep, intimate connection time with myself and go into the memories and go into the feels and find that stuff? Now, a yellow dress isn't going to necessarily reveal itself, maybe, but it
Right.
may.
So, because when you get into the 7 main chakras, and if for sake of time, we don't have to like get into the chi and the prana. You get into all of that, which I really, really love. But you talk about a human energy system, the aura, and then how it surrounds, and then what is happening when, let's say, there's trauma bonding, or there's somebody, a family member that's real low vibration. As an empath, what is happening when those energy systems are interacting?
It's really tough because oftentimes we'll have codependent relationships. So when we've got empaths, and lots of times we'll have 2 empaths. So they're just killing each other all day long when they're partners. And so if I've got the lower vibration at home and I'm that higher vibration, I automatically am going to, if I'm not diligent, allow myself to get sucked in. And this is when I lose my energy. When we get skilled, we keep our frequency here and we learn boundaries differently. And there's a really great I've used my husband for an example for years and years and years, so he's well aware that I talk about him all the time. And so obviously I'm higher into vibration because of my work that I do all the time. So if I will trigger with something because his is lower and it's one of those repetitive, silly things like, gosh, you told me you were going to do the dishes and I came home and now they're all dirty and I'm tired and they're sitting there, really? I thought you were going to do that. Right? So instead, I maybe make my statement, but then I do a mantra in my head, and I teach this to my people too. He gets to just sit there and watch TV. He gets to ignore me. He gets to not do the dishes. He gets to do anything he wants to. It's remembering that trigger is he gets to do or not do, period. Then I leave the room, I get some space from it, and I walk into another space and I say, now I get to. What do I get to do with this? I get to get mad. I get to go fight. I get to pout. I get to stomp my feet, or I get to watch the dishes with resentment and anger and keep the fight going, or I just want the dishes done. So
yeah, this is so good. And this is really good with relationships because a lot of empaths, and I was just talking to one of my friends the other day, and she was kind of complaining about her relationship, which so many empaths do.
Oh, yeah.
Like he doesn't care. He's just busy watching football all the time. He doesn't pay attention. He doesn't understand my emotions,
Okay,
and my feelings.
Stop right there. I'm going to test you. See if you caught it. Those 3 things I talked about, what did she trigger?
Oh, all of them. I'm not worthy, the safe, all of that. Yeah.
If he loved me enough, he would have done the dishes. If I was important enough, he wouldn't be watching football.
But he gets
if I had enough worth, he would see that he wants to spend time with me and not football. Do you see how we go to those same triggers every time?
Yes. Yeah. How do you go to the he gets to without judgment?
I don't. I have a lot of judgment when it starts, but the more I mantra it, the less judgment I have.
Yeah, it's so good because it's almost like it's like it's like not taking on the energy of the other person. It's so
Yes.
freeing, actually.
And give yourself some humanity, people. We are not great at this. I mean, I've been doing, like I said, energy work for 18, almost 20 years now, and I still suck at this sometimes because I'm a human, right? I mean, I can get
Hmm.
overwhelmed. I can have a really big day. I mean, I was at a conference yesterday, a health and wellness, energy conference. You should have seen the people walking around this place, Jason. Their heads were like, because everybody was empathing everything. And I'm like, stop, just expect everything in your world is energy. Look
Hmm.
at life differently. Expect the roller coaster. Expect the chaos and just navigate with a bit of a perspective of observing and a kind of sense of humor, right? I mean, don't get
Yeah, and
sucked into CNN. Take a bowl of popcorn and go, wow, I'm sending out energy to those people. I send out love and kindness to those that are suffering, but I will
mm,
not, double negative, I will not be grateful for my calm life in White Bear Lake having a glass of wine on my porch. I'm not going to feel bad about that. That needs to go into the matrix,
yeah,
right?
that's awesome. And you see that a lot of time with empaths is they feel bad about anything good.
Oh my God, they feel bad about everything. They're so guilt ridden about
Yes,
feeling
100%.
anything for themselves and positivity. And it's like, this is what the collectiveness does. And that's why I wrote this book from a collective standpoint, because there's a lot of empath books out there, but there was never one that wrote from the multidimensional collective fields before.
Mm.
And this is the one that kicks us up the most because it's never going to be balanced, ever, 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 ever. So it's always going to be programmed. It's always going to be chaotic. So be aware that I can be doing really great. And then all of a sudden, boom, I can take on the weight of the world in 2 seconds and everything's miserable. It's not going to go anywhere. So it's you that is doing the work to make the change on the perspective.
Oh, that's so good. If you have time, Susan, I have just two more things.
Yeah.
One is I want to get into energy vampire, and then I want to get into discernment, and then we'll be
Okay.
done.
Yep.
So you wrote in the book, an energy vampire is a person who purposely increases their own personal energy field by siphoning another's life force, chi or prana.
Mm-hmm.
But you get into it a little bit more, and I like this. You say, in these situations, a vampire appears to suddenly be re-energized physically, emotionally, and mentally as a result of the connection to the conversation with the person they seek out.
Yeah.
Now, this is funny because the empath is always getting attacked by energy vampires. They don't realize, and you point this out in your book, that they can be an energy vampire too.
You are the energy vampire just as much. And that was the one that took me to my knees when I started to really get humble with myself years ago, because I used to run gigantic international trade shows. And I was the boss of the trade show, like as far as the production of it all, right? And I would
Wow, that's a
walk through
lot.
that, and no one would know who I was, by the way, because I was like stealth. So no one knew who I was. So they weren't like getting out of my way because of who I was, but my energy field was like, right? And I was just coming through, and I was sucking everything and everybody up all day long, and the crowds would part like Moses water, I mean, it was like, and I also thought, that's so weird. There's 10,000 people on the show floor and nobody bumps into me. I had no idea that I was sucking everything and everybody dry and just barreling everything out of my way, manipulating everything, right? So we
Mhm.
are the vampire as much as being vampired when we're really big at this, especially when we're psychic. We take it from everywhere. So when I realized how much my exuberant personality was me, but it was also vampiring, I started to go, oh, I was noticing people would sit next to me like this because my field was so big. That's not nice.
Right, right.
So a lot of it is ignorance at the beginning. A lot of it truly is. And I think that's why I tried to make this book be step by step by step so that we can really take it infancy steps at first and go, oh my God, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I took it, being a leader, I took it like the book was, it even like brought me to my knees more, like you're saying, because I'm like, these poor people that work with me.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrific. Well, let's close in this. I want to get into, because this is kind of the practical side of things, uh, the discernment process. And I know you have like a 4 discernment practice. Can you
Yeah.
just quickly go through those practices on
The
discernment and what
very, very
discernment is?
first one is really, well, I'm going to jump ahead. Actually, the first thing is learning how to ground and bubble yourself so that you're actually in your own auric field or gas tank with no leaks and you're connected inside of your body. That's actually precursor. in the book. That's the precursor. But now when we're getting to the point of discerning, because I have a relationship within my own boundary, I have an intimacy with my own resonance and frequency, I know what's mine or not mine. So if I'm walking into something and it hits me, I'm like, oh, that's not mine. But I've been doing it a really long time. So those that are in learning phase, the discernment process is working on that bubble. And then the minute that you feel something, you're asking, is this mine? Is this mine? Is this sad mine? If I get overwhelmed with sad and I don't discern it's mine or not mine, we humans are so talented that I will make it mine by the end of the day.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I'm going to start going, oh my God, maybe my relationship's sad. Oh my God, maybe I'm really sad about my body or maybe, and we'll make it ours so quickly because that's what the brain does. So the first question is this mine? And challenge that, because oftentimes, especially when we're getting psychic and bigger, we're getting like, oh no, it's not yours. It's the water or it's the trees. And you're going to go, what the heck does that mean? What do you mean it's the trees? Why would I hear it's the trees? Well, the trees talk to a lot of empaths because they're very sad the way that we treat them. If I break that down right away and shove that away because it sounds silly, I don't do the work. It's important for me to keep questioning and getting a relationship with that incoming information. So is this mine? Is this mine now? Is this mine from this life? Is this mine from childhood? Just really dissecting that down. That's super, super important. And so it's identifying that boundary. Did this come from outside of me? Did it come from bigger? Is it in the astral field? Where is that boundary? And how does that match with my boundary of my gas tank? So knowing your own frequency is really, really, really critical. And then knowing your triggers, like, wow, I just triggered really sadness. Is this my sadness? Or is this like, oh, this doesn't feel like my sadness. What's that trigger? That's not a normal trigger. So, and examining triggers is really, really helpful. And then scanning. And I'm a huge body scanner. I body scan all the time. And I'm 100% telepathic empath. So I can scan your body and beat you in 2 seconds because I've trained myself to know my body so much that when I merge with you, I can go, oh, that's Jason's sad, not mine. Oh, that's Jason's sad, not mine. So body scanning techniques can really, really get us to a really heightened skill set in this world of discernment.
Yeah, I love that. And I just want to thank you for writing this book. It's a big book, which is awesome. There's a ton of help in it. You wrote it as far as kind of like dissecting an empath and figuring it out. And then the way that you wrote it with it being so practical. And I want everyone to get Suzanne's book, Confident Empath. And then what's your website that people can go to?
It's just my name. So it's S for Suzanne. So it's S Worthley. So SWORTHLEY.com. So
and you do healing and you're an energy practitioner.
Yep.
What do you have?
I do remote work. I do in-person work. I do land, people, animals. I do hospice. I do paranormal. I do everything and anything to do with energy. I teach. I do tours. I'm writing my third book right now, all the kind of galactic weird stuff that I don't really talk about until now.
Oh, good. We talk about that on the podcast, so we'll have to have you back on when you're.
We'll have to talk about that one too. But I suggest on the book is I tell people, read the book because there are amazing stories in there too from the client perspective. Like the stuff that I tell in there is insane. And a lot of people want to read the whole book, which is awesome. So read the book. And then if you really are an empath, then really read the book. Go back, dog ear, highlight, circle things, make the page cracked. Do the things that you have to do to study a book, not just read a book, because this will be life changing if you choose to do the work. And I'm not kidding, because hundreds of my clients have done it. So
yeah, I love that. It's so true. It's a study manual, a book that you need to study, like break it down. Well, thanks, Suzanne. Appreciate it.
On my website.
Yes, thank you.